I was perplexed. I'd been recommended by Charles and Dave, high members of long-standing honor. No member voted against me. I had memorized and recited all 13 paragraphs of the lodge's charter and bylaws. I had even endured some unofficial hazing, some more humiliating than others. But who am I to question the process? I was almost there. Almost a member of something prestigious and ancient. Whoever she was, I hoped I had enough charm to gain acceptance. Nolan saw the consternation in my demeanor. "Don't worry, after this you're one of us." He flipped his hood over his head and led the rest of the elders out of the room. A train of high-minded, high-classed men wearing scarlet robes paraded past me, looking solemnly down to the ground. I could not get out of my chair and leave the room until the elders had left the building. I could not turn or look behind me. I had to wait until I heard the door shut and then quietly recite the incantation of reconciliation. In the water is birth and life. The sacramental candles in abyss immersed. In the water is fear and death. The two as one, the choice be made. Make me worthy and blessed to be saved. After the heavy iron door slammed shut, I recited the incantation 12 times, and after each time I crossed myself, if you could call it that, not by making the sign of the cross, but with hand gestures to symbolize the signs of the zodiac, gestures which only 2 days before I had to memorize and demonstrate before the elders. The incantation was odd to me. Unlike everything else I had experienced as a novice, the crux of it all was this was just for fun, entertainment, a chance to hang out with some influential people. I didn't approach the rituals with any kind of sincerity. They were innocuous and almost childish. On the other hand, the incantation felt serious, religious, and foreboding. The elders did not tolerate anything but a strict formality to the incantation and its recitation. Eyes straight ahead. Don't look to the left or to the right. Deliberate breathing, deep and slow, Dave would demand when first preparing me to properly recite the incantation. When I had finished, I stood up and collapsed to the floor, my left leg useless, tingling from a blockage of blood. "Damn, my leg's asleep," I murmured to myself. "No." The door opened. Dave rushed in and grabbed me under my armpits, lifted me up and dumped me back in the chair. "Now you have to start over again, and when you're finished you leave the room quietly, not saying a word or a sound. You leave with piety in mind." I watched as he left the room and closed the door. I noticed that he was dressed in casual attire, blue jeans and work boots, uncloaked of his ceremonial robes. I repeated the ritual and made sure to leave the room with the utmost respect. I felt watched, eyes looking scathingly at my behavior, grading my intentions. I drove home with no knowledge of what was to come next. All I got was that cryptic message that if she liked me, then I was in. Who was she? Was that symbolic talk? I didn't know. Neither did I have any idea of when I would see the elders again to know of their decision. They simply told me that they would be in touch. Sleep that night was sporadic to say the least. I didn't like how Dave manhandled me like I was a child. It felt outside the bounds of the ceremony. It felt personal. There was a disgust in his voice and mannerisms. I was having second thoughts about joining the lodge, especially if I was going to have to be around him all the time. There was a realization that I had never liked Dave, as an acquaintance in high school or as a fellow employee working for the sheriff's office. Finally, after struggling to flush hateful thoughts of Dave from my mind, I fell asleep. It must have been a deep sleep, or perhaps I was drugged. Because when I woke up, I was in the back of a moving van, stripped down to my underwear, with my hands tied behind my back and my ankles bound by an electrical cord. There was a bandana tied tightly around my mouth. 3 people were sitting around me dressed all in black, with black ski masks pulled over their faces. The van came to a sudden stop. One of the men sliding forward hit his head on the sidewall. Shit, damn, what the hell? I recognized Dave's voice. My fear somewhat subsided, thinking this was just the final ceremony, but the viciousness of it all made me suspicious. I waffled between relief and stress. This was Dave's doing, not a ceremony. I started to doubt his intentions. Maybe he was angry at my disrespect. No, this was just a part of the act, the final rigmarole to suffer acceptance. The rear van doors opened. Outside there was a faint early morning light. The men, which I had surmised were in fact some of the elders, grabbed me by my ankles and yanked me out of the van and let me fall to the ground. My elbow landed against a large, jagged rock. A stinging sensation jolted up through my forearm. Blood dripped from my elbow to the rock, pooling in a depression on the surface. How quick I bleed out, I thought to myself. Be careful. You gave him too much. Are you a doctor? The other man shook his head. No? Then shut up. Both of you shut up. This is sacred, Dave yelled. The other two men picked me up and carried me over to a wooden platform. They lifted me up and placed me on the back of the platform and walked away to the stairs at the front of the platform. At that moment, I had a thought to run away, but then I remembered that I was bound and gagged. I tried to reassure myself that this was just part of the ritual, the end to a long, arduous journey for acceptance. The platform was situated in front of a lake. I figured it was Old Hickory Lake, but I didn't recognize the area. At the edge of the platform was a metal box, the size of a coffin, attached to a red monorail that ran from the platform into the water. The red line under the water swayed with the current, not affixed to anything solid. There was a hoist at the top of the monorail and a chain that ran parallel to it with intermediate sprockets at precise distances. The sprockets were engraved with the signs of the zodiac. Dave unfastened some clasps and opened the lid. Get him in there quick. We've already taken too long. All three of the men picked me up and attempted to toss me into the box. I wriggled, squirmed, and kicked until I landed my heel on Dave's chin. He dropped my ankles, massaging and moving his lower jaw. There was a scowl on his face as he pulled a knife out of his back pocket. He slowly pulled the blade out and then sliced me across the shin. When he did, he pushed in hard as he slashed, making sure the blade cut deep and wide. Blood drained out down around my ankle as the wound splayed open even wider. Do that again, and it'll be you, neck. They put me in the box without the least bit of resistance. Dave grabbed some wires attached to the inside of the lid. He peeled paper free from 2 electrodes and stuck them on either side of my chest. My elbow no longer hurt because of the excruciating pain in my shin. Dave took his knife and cut the bandana free from my mouth. I don't want to be a member anymore. Let me go home, I pleaded. Too late, buddy. Good luck. He closed the lid and secured it. I heard a motor start and a clink of the chain. There was a jolt and then movement. In front of me was a window so I could watch myself being submerged. The water climbed up the window and then over the top. I was under and descending deeper. The box slowly stood upright as the monorail went from an angle to a straight line. The light from the surface grew fainter as I descended. The air was thin and hot, my lungs constricted, my body covered in sweat and blood. The box bounced and came to an abrupt stop. The bottom was stirred, and mud floated up in front of the window. I could hardly breathe, so I wasn't keenly focused on what was going on outside of the box. But as soon as the debris cleared, a pale white face appeared in the window. Her cheeks were sunken in and her lips were missing, torn or possibly never there to begin with, exposing her crooked, rotten teeth. Her stringy black hair flowed upward and into the current. The most alarming aspect, though, was that in her empty eye sockets were 2 flickering candle flames. She examined me from head to foot, her head moving eerily up and down, side to side. She reached over to the side of the box, and I heard a squeaking sound and then a gush of water. She had opened a valve. I moved over and pushed my hip against the hole to try and stop the flow. I heard a muffled growl from the woman, and she violently shook the box. I heard the clasps being unfastened. I moved back away from the hole and stood perfectly erect. I looked forward straight into her eyes, never moving from her gaze. I began to recite the incantation of reconciliation. I steadied my breath and concentrated on what Dave had taught. The woman flashed a constrained grin, being that joy is difficult to express without lips. It was a subtle sign that she was pleased. The water was up to my chest, and I hadn't faltered, but fear got the best of me, and I started to weep. The woman expressed her anger again. The box shook and the clasps were shimmied. I gathered myself and started the incantation. I wasn't calm. That would be a lie, but I did find a repose in the words of the incantation. I sharply focused on its meaning, even down to the syllables. I was looking at the woman, but not seeing her. My mind was occupied. I purposely kept it occupied so that the perception of my death would lay buried in the subconscious. I had accepted my immediate demise. The cold water cooled the interior of the box, offering a torturing bit of relief for a moment, but only for a moment. The water seeped into my nostrils. I choked outward only to swallow a large amount of water. I couldn't choke, I couldn't breathe. My stomach and lungs were bloated with water. My chest burned and every muscle in my body tightened. The entirety of my body in an agonizing strain. I kicked and trembled, my heart beating faster and faster, a sharpness of immense pain radiating out from my chest. The mind began to race, hardly perceptive beyond panic and survival. My eyes were burning, but to my astonishment, I had a final vision before the end. The floating corpse of a monster was now a young, beautiful woman, happy and smiling, perfectly content with watching me die. The next thing I remember is waking up in a hospital bed. My eyes groggy. I could see a blurry silhouette of a man bending over me. "You did good, my boy. You died with courage. She accepts you." It was Nolan. "What happened?" "Shh. Get some rest. We'll talk in the morning." The next morning, I woke up in a lavish bed, with an ornate iron canopy decorated with mermaids and stars, and a bright red fabric with gold fringes draped over the top. I got up and made my way to the door. There in the next room was a room full of hooded elders sitting on a dais with an altar in front. On the altar was a scarlet robe. Every one of the elders had their hoods pulled up except for Dave. He looked sullen and depressed, never lifting his eyes to look at me. I had no words. I wondered how I got to this place. 1 minute in a hospital, the next in a mansion. Charles stood up and spoke. "You are now one of us. Take this scarlet robe and wear it with pride." I went to the altar and pulled the robe off and held it out in front of me. It was without a hood, the mark of a member, but not yet an elder. I put it on with a little hesitancy, but also with a little pride. I felt I had earned it, but questioned what I had gotten myself into. The ceremony dragged on for over an hour, and then there were congratulations, cigars, and alcohol, plenty of alcohol. Everyone was jovial and far beyond sober, yet Dave never moved from his chair, never partook of any of the festivities. I was curious. I found Nolan tucked away in a corner, semi-conscious but happy to see me. "I knew you'd succeed. Thanks, but I'm not sure I understand all this nor want it. You don't have a choice, none of us do." I knew that to be the truth. He didn't have to voice the obvious. The fact that they had killed me and shown me something both horrifying and mystifying meant that I could never leave of my own volition. "What's wrong with Dave? Is he pissed at me?" I asked. "No, he's scared. When one comes out, the other goes in." "What's that mean?" "She liked you, so she let you go. That means we owe her," he explained. I gave him a confused look. It's Dave's turn to take a ride to the bottom of the sea to have a little meeting with the fair old lady. He was the master of ceremony, his chance to be an elder. "But guess what?" he said with a drunken grin on his face. "If she likes the novice, then the master of ceremony has to take his place, and there isn't any coming back like you did." "What happens?" I asked. "She eats him,"